So in this presentation, we're going to look at some ways to help you plan to have successful meetings. So we want to kind of look at communication, and many times the greatest barrier to a productive meeting is the lack of good communication between team members and the failure to plan. So what can you do about that? First, you kind of want to look at those things that influence communication. There's an emotional influence. This is your child. The atmosphere and attitude of the last IEP meeting, the reason for today's meeting, the seriousness of today's priority issue, and feelings related to not being knowledgeable about the process or the language that is being used. So you kind of want to think about that. The atmosphere and the attitude of the last IEP meeting. If it was a good meeting, then you're going to feel pretty good going into the next meeting. If it was a bad meeting and it was kind of hostile, you're going to have some anxiety about going into that meeting. If it's a very serious reason for today's meeting, if it's because of a discipline issue and there's some consequences that your child might be facing, that's going to affect your emotions and how you might react. Again, that kind of goes along with the seriousness of today's priority issue. And then not being knowledgeable or understanding of the process that you're going through. So if you don't understand what this meeting is about and how you can participate, you're going to communicate differently in that situation. So we'll talk about some of those things as we go through. So spend some time reflecting on your communication style in your meetings. It may in fact be a different style than in other areas of your life. There may be many influences that alter your typical communication style when it comes to dealing with your child's education. So in a previous life, I was a bank branch manager, and I was very comfortable talking to my employees and talking to middle management and trying to accomplish what I wanted to accomplish. I felt very knowledgeable, and I was very comfortable in that situation. But when my son first was on an IEP, I wasn't comfortable in that situation. I didn't know what was going on, and so I communicated much differently in that atmosphere. So you kind of want to look at how you might communicate in different areas of your life, and we'll talk about how you might be able to change some of that. You might be a passive communicator. So the definition is not participating readily or actively, influenced, acted upon, receiving, enduring, or submitting without resistance. An example of this is, I'd love to say something about the gaps in the program they're planning for John, but I'm afraid if I do, a couple of teachers may make it rough on him in other ways. So that's how I was when my son was first on an IEP. I really had no idea what was going on, did not understand how the process worked. I depended on school personnel to provide me all of the information that I needed. And even though they did so, I truly didn't understand. I was a very passive communicator in those meetings. I listened and I accepted what the information that they provided and the programming that they provided for my son, but I didn't participate. When you're a passive communicator, you're often frustrated and you have a sense of powerlessness, and somebody else is always in control. So when you're a passive communicator, you're giving that control to somebody else. Are you saying what you think? Or you might be an aggressive communicator. That definition is unprovoked offenses or attacks, making an all-out effort to win or succeed, competitive and pushy. An example of this would be, you will not fail my child. You will provide more reading instruction. I'm going to tell the superintendent of schools about this, and if he doesn't do anything about it, I will go to the Board of Education. When you're an aggressive communicator, you risk antagonizing others and you set up future conflicts. You're dreaded, and if you have victories, they're typically temporary. So I have been an aggressive communicator as well. And when that communication is aggressive, it really takes the focus off of the child. It's setting up a win-lose situation, and that's not what's best for the child. We want to focus on the child and make sure it's a win-win situation for everybody. When I was an aggressive communicator, it did set up future conflicts. People were coming in with walls up and ready to do battle. And again, it took the focus off of my son's needs, and it was more about which side was going to have a victory. And if there was a victory, it was temporary because they were just going to come back and keep fighting. And the people that I met with, they didn't want to meet with me. They didn't want to have that type of communication. So I wasn't very effective in getting the services that I needed for my son. Or you can be an effective communicator. Adequate to accomplish a purpose, producing the intended or expected result, being prepared. And this is what we try to teach in effective communication. By being prepared, you are preparing to accomplish a specific purpose, and you're taking all of those influences into consideration, and you're making a plan on how to deal with that. The long-term goals you've set up for Mary sound fine. However, I can't agree with the type of math exercises you have planned. When she's learning a new concept, she needs to work with several approaches, not just with seeing the problem on paper. So you're saying what you think, and you're supporting what you think with information that you've gathered and planned and prepared for this meeting. When you use effective communication, you don't always get your desired result. You can still have conflicting ideas. It does require a lot of practice and self-control. But when you use effective communication, others feel respected and valued, and you feel better about your efforts. You're less likely to burn bridges and more likely to get desired results. This is a long-term relationship with school personnel. It goes over your child's entire educational career. So you want to make sure that you're building those relationships so that you can focus on your child, that you can get the information that you need, and you can use that information to get the services that your child needs. So what about planning? Does your planning style mirror your communication style? Passive, I don't have a plan. The school always runs the meetings. Most of the time I don't even know why we're meeting or who I'm meeting with. So again, that goes back to that planning style and letting somebody else being in control. And we've talked in other workshops and other sections about the tools that you can use to help you plan. So by knowing who's going to be in the meeting and what the purpose of the meeting is, helps you plan for your input into the meeting. Or again, you can be aggressive. Your plan is to get them all together and tell them off and leave. I'm planning to tell them that they can talk to my attorney. So when you get to that level of aggressiveness and it becomes a battle of win or lose, again, the focus is not on the child, and you're not finding ways to work through those differences so that you can accomplish what you want to accomplish. An effective way to plan would be having an agenda with your priority in order, your priority issues in order. Practice exactly what you want to say. Anticipate the responses to the requests and have a plan for dealing with those responses. And have a plan for being too defensive or too emotional.